always a fun mix every week. So many of you I recognize from weeks past. Some of you are new. Welcome. This is our Northwest Film Center and Oregon Film Happy Hour, week 10. And we're branching out a little bit this week into experiential and VR and AR and augmented reality storytelling, because so many of you have been talking about, after this kind of shift from just trying to figure out how we were all going to navigate this to really thinking about new and exciting opportunities to use your skills in good ways. And some of you are already, I recognize some of you are already in that space, that storytelling space, and others are in the filmmaking, television, production spaces, and I think are here to learn a little more. But we're so excited to still be doing this after 10 weeks. So thank you to Tim, as always, for showing up. I was complimenting him on his relaxed look today. And to December, who's also right by our side, and she's the one with the beautiful background. You all have beautiful backgrounds, but she's the one with the beautiful background with is it Cannon Beach? Is that what beach you've chosen today? Yep. Excellent. And we're recording this just as a reminder. And usually for those of you who are brand new, we talk for about 10-15 minutes. Our speakers talk for about 10-15 minutes, and then anytime you can start to write in comments along the side. And Tim and I will help moderate and ask those questions and make sure all of the burning questions are answered as best as possible. But we're so excited to have Michel Reilhac at 1 a.m. calling in from Amsterdam. If for those of you who cannot see his name, he's the one with the halo of hearts around his head and the best glasses in the biz. So welcome, Michel from Amsterdam. And René from right here in Portland. And they'll tell you a little bit more about who they are and how they work together. But we're so grateful that you guys have given your time to us today. I know that you'd rather be drinking beer probably on your own or with your family, René. And Michel, you might want to be asleep. I don't know what you do at 1 a.m. It's none of my business, but I just want to make sure that we give them extra love today, because there's so many folks that are tuning in, and this is a real treat to have both of you and talk about who you are and what you do. So I don't know if you want to rock, paper, scissors, but one of you maybe go first and just talk a little bit about who you are, what you're doing at this moment, and kind of how it's relevant to, this crazy crew of folks which, are making art and making work here in Portland.
René, you go.
Okie dokie. So I run a company called Kaleidoscope. We're an arts organization that have been focused on people working in VR and AR since about 2014. My wife and I were based in San Francisco at the time, and we had a number of friends who were creating really interesting things that weren't games in VR. And we thought, there's probably tons of other artists that are going to want to adopt virtual reality and augmented reality as their medium of choice. And we should form an organization that could support them in some way. And we discovered after doing a film festival for VR projects, we did the first, or I mean, who cares if it was first? We did a film festival back in 2015 that toured North America. Portland was actually the first stop on the tour. And we curated about 20 projects that were, coming more from the cinematic tradition. And we expanded it in 2016 to 10 cities in Europe and Asia, and partnered with Wired Magazine. And in that process, we spoke to hundreds and hundreds of artists. And we were just trying to figure out, first, who was making interesting work in this new medium, and then what were the biggest issues they were facing. And I come from a filmmaking background. Everybody in my family is an artist of one kind or another. So I suspected what the answer was going to be, and it didn't surprise me that much, that it was money. That was the biggest thing that all the artists were facing, is how the fuck are we going to pay for this, making work in this very expensive medium. So we decided that was going to be what we focused on as an organization, is helping artists raise money for work. And we did this primarily through events to begin with. We would host private marketplace events where we would curate high quality projects on one topic or another that were in development and looking for funding. And then we would invite people in the industry who we knew were funding content, as well as festival curators like Michel. And that worked pretty well. And we raised, to date, we've helped artists raise a little more than $34 million for different projects. But we discovered that, pretty early on, it was not scalable. Events are brutal. They're exhausting. They're expensive. They take forever. to pull off. So we knew early on that we're going to have to leverage technology in one way or another. So we started to build an online platform that initially would just be a marketplace where artists could post projects and present them to people in the industry in the same way that they were doing that at our events. When the pandemic hit, we needed to respond. I think everyone felt a need to respond. And so we accelerated development on another product that would get money in the hands of artists in a more direct way, which is called Kaleidoscope Grants. So that's a new thing that we're really excited about, and we've been super, dedicating all of our time and energy to. And it's a basic new model where we take all of our membership dues and we pool them together and award monthly grants on different topics. And we're just concluding our first month of Kaleidoscope Grants. They're starting off pretty small. We'll be awarding about $10,000 in grants this month. But if the growth continues, by the end of the year, we'll be awarding around $100,000 per month. So happy to answer any questions about Kaleidoscope in general or this new grants initiative or anything else. But that gives you an overview of who I am and what we're doing as a company.
René, I can add that René partners now with major international companies such as the Cannes XR section of the market that will be taking place in June. He also partners with the French embassy in the US and many organizations across the world, helping, facilitating exchanges and financing between makers, producers, and investors. Quite remarkable.
Thank you, Michel. And well, how about I do this? I'll introduce Michel then. So I have become friends with Michel over the last 2 years, I think. Venice was on my radar forever, but I hadn't gone yet. And I had heard that it was the first year they held it. I had a bunch of friends that went and they all said, "Oh my God, it's amazing. You have to go." And the second year I had a kid, so I couldn't go. And then last year I finally got to go, and it was the most amazing festival. What Michel and Liz did with Venice, it's already in a magical, surreal, virtual place. Venice is bizarre in both wonderful and not so wonderful ways, but it's totally virtual. So you're already in this heightened other reality just by being there. And then the curation and attention to detail that Michel and Liz place is really like no other festival. And I love all the other festivals, but they have professional docents. They actually pay attention to making sure that the work is exhibited in a separate space so you don't have sound bleed. They give people the proper space to do beautiful installations. If you haven't gone, it has jumped to the top of my list of events that I have to attend every year.
Well, thank you, René. Yes, we're very lucky that the Venice Biennale, which is one of the oldest standing cultural institutions in the world, and the most heavily funded by any government, is trusting us. It is one of the oldest institutions, and yet they have trusted me in the beginning with the idea of starting an official competition for immersive content within the frame of the International Film Festival of Venice. And to this day, so we started in 2016 with a test run in a small space, and it was successful enough that they trusted us to go full speed and make it a full-fledged competition section. And to do this, they gave us basically an island called Lazzaretto Vecchio in the Venice Laguna, very, very close to the Lido, for those of you who know Venice. And this island, which had been abandoned for over a century, used to be a leprosy asylum where people with leprosy would be sent basically to die. So thousands of people have died on this island centuries ago. And it has been shut down since the end of the 19th century. And it basically reopened as the most high-tech cultural place you can think of. And within these walls where people were sent to die, we recreated a hub with the highest, most sophisticated technical medium art form that you can think of. And so for the past 3 years, from 2017 until 2019, we have been gathering about 45 different works of art, all as world premieres or international premieres that are displayed. In parallel to that, I also run what is called the Venice Biennale College for VR and for cinema, which is a workshop where we develop up to 12 VR pieces through a 2-week long workshop within which we invite international experts to help us coach and tutor these projects. Amy here is one of our amazing tutors and has been coming to the college cinema for years now. She knows Venice by heart because she spent a lot of time there, I think, as a student quite some time ago. And and we also managed to finance 100% one production out of the 12 that we develop, and that production then comes and premieres within the Venice Biennale at Venice VR. The other thing that we do as well is that we select 12 projects, VR projects that are in financing, and we invite them to Venice. They come, and we make sure that they meet as many potential investors in their projects as possible. So in that way, the Venice Biennale is involved in the development stage with the college, in the financing stage, and in the exhibition stage. So we really are the only international organization that supports the form, in all these different steps, and particularly doing it fully officially. To this day, there is no other film festival that has an official competition where the immersive content is treated and awarded the same way, exactly on the same level as the feature film program. So this is basically what I do. And now with the COVID crisis, we're faced with a very, very new challenge, the same way that René and Kaleidoscope, sort of yet reinvented a way of being in the world and being side by side with the artists. We have to do the same thing. So the decision has been made by the president of the Biennale that the film festival will be happening physically in Venice in September. It will probably be the first festival post-COVID happening in real life, but obviously in a very, very small scale, because most international industry guests will not be allowed or able to travel to Venice early September. Most of the guests that we have already invited have answered this way, saying they could not come. So it will be a very scaled down version. And we have made the decision that Venice VR, the VR competition section, is going to be held entirely online, virtually through a VR platform. So I have spent, oops, I'm turning yellow. Oh, okay. It must be my heart. Yeah, I'm gonna switch my my hearts out because it's bugging, and I'll go back to something more standard like that. So we've spent the last 2 months every day online in VR platforms. René has not mentioned that he is partnering with the most amazing VR platform, and I'm sure, René, you will talk about it, called Museum of Other Realities, who is right now also supporting the Hamburg VR Festival that is starting in a couple of days. So there must be, I counted, there must be around 45 different VR social platforms existing today in different stages of development, and that can do all kinds of different things, but none of the platforms can do everything. So you need to understand what they do to be able to find the best one. So we've decided to go for something very robust, less sophisticated, but easy to use, easy to access, and with no friction. So our platform will be supported on VR Chat, designed by VR Room, and the 6 DOF pieces, the interactive pieces, will be supported with a partnership with in partnership with Viveport. So we have 3 months to develop this platform, to take into account the fact that Venice in the past 3 years has become a meeting ground where people enjoy meeting a lot of people from the community. So we want to make sure that is made possible through an easy access to avatars. We're going to be working on the design of these avatars and their functionalities, and at the same time offering the possibility to watch the pieces in 3 DOF, the linear VR pieces, and the 6 DOF pieces, which are more interactive. So that's what I'm spending my days in. And just before we started this, I was for 2 hours in the beta version of one of those platforms called Neos, which is made out of the Czech Republic, and which completely blew me away and shows how much the technology and the talent invested in making VR a social place, not a place anymore that has been criticized for being isolating. The new frontier of VR is fully social, and that's what I'm fully involved in right now.
Thanks to both of you for that intro. I think we're all on the call. I think there's a number of folks on the call that are involved in nonprofits, that are involved in festivals, that are involved in the community at large, in businesses. And there's a lot of people that also wear creator hats. And I think, to some, this whole Brave New World sounds super exciting, but people are still trying to wrap their head around how they make that pivot from film writer or television writer to working in VR and immersive. Or they are camera or grip or lighting, and they're trying to figure out how to tell stories and utilize their skills within this space. So it'd be great to hear a little bit about how you would use this time and encourage them to look at either work or communities or platforms that you all think, because I think you two know these things more than anybody, to begin to help folks educate and change their mindsets around kind of a fluid, production-based model that's based in television and film, to really opening their mind to other possibilities.
René?
Yeah. Well, so I think first you need to understand where the industry is at right now. We're headed into at least a recession, if not a depression. And before that, the VR and AR industry was already in a bit of a slump because it had this huge wave of venture capital money that was invested in large companies dumping a lot of money. It was sort of the first wave of big investment. And that sort of peaked in 2017. And then in 2018, probably bottomed out, maybe started 2019 and bottomed out. And over the last quarter of 2019, we definitely saw an uptick, and it was really encouraging. But now, pandemic. So you should know just that if you're thinking about making the transition, that it is not the easiest thing to transition to from a financial perspective. So I think you need to do it for the love of the medium and the love of the art, because it's very challenging to raise money for projects. It's very challenging to make a living in it. So I think that's a good thing to state up front, that is the reality of it. But I still believe, as much as I did, the first day we founded Kaleidoscope, that this is going to play a very significant, if not dominant, role in the media landscape in the not too distant future. We just haven't made that switch yet. And it's unclear to me exactly when that bit will flip. but I'm confident that it will. So I would, anyone who's thinking about making that transition, know that it's hard, but know that it's a bit of an investment in your own professional future. Whether you're an arts organization or a creator thinking about making that transition, this is coming, it's happening. I think it's definitely inevitable, but it can't be looked at as your main revenue source unless you're like really all in and know that it's, know that you're up for a challenge. I don't know. It's late in the day, Amy. I'm sorry if that, I feel like that didn't answer your question.
It's okay. I mean, I think, maybe Michel, you can hit on some of the places that they can look at, maybe
Yes.
companies
Yes.
and or festivals or because I feel like, I'm a tick below you guys, maybe like 7, but it's hard to keep track in a way what all is happening in this space to educate yourself. And I have to say, I've only been in Portland for a couple of months now, but I was just having a conversation with one of you that's on the call. There is a burgeoning kind of VR, AR experiential scene that is building, and Portland's really punching above its weight class and starting, and it's wonderful to have René here now too. And I think that there is this kind of ecosystem that is happening here. So I want to make sure that people, if they are interested, really know where to look and where to go so that they're not feeling adrift.
Yeah, I can do that. Before we do that, I would though like to reiterate something that we discussed when I was in Portland in March, which is the very strong conviction that I have today that any institution, any event, any organization, and I was going to say even any individual, should now think of themselves as hybrid. And by that, I mean that thinking of how you're going to exist in the digital dimension is no longer just an issue of communication or marketing or promotion, of what you do. It is part of the DNA of who we are in these times. By that, and the COVID sort of accelerates that. If I take the example of Venice, we can see that an event like this is going to be attracting people that are close. It will be mostly Italians who are going to come to Venice this year, while it usually attracts people from literally all over the world. So the physical dimension of the event is going to be more local, and it's going to be more limited in that scope in terms of who is going to be impacted by the physical event. So now going digital and going virtual means that it's no longer a way to promote the event, but it's a way to make it exist right next to its audience, which is scattered all over the world. So going virtual means to address this idea that you need to be remotely accessible, that distant presencing is going to become, like René just said, part of our lives and part of the nature of what we do. So this is a fundamental shift in the paradigm of thinking what we do and who we are at all levels. This hybridization of the nature of any event and organization and being, I think, is a key thing to embrace today. So that being said, the first advice I would give, and based on experience, is that I think you need to get a headset. You need to get a way to enter the world of VR. It's only by experiencing it, and it doesn't cost money. I mean, just the acquisition of the headset, and now you can get a Quest, for $400. It's only by going there and traveling and experimenting that you can start understanding what it can do for you. Because there are many things that VR can do, and it's a tool for making things. It's a way of experiencing stories and other worlds, and or documentaries or games and health things. But it's also a tool to be together, and it's not something to replace real life communication, real life exchanges. It's the next best thing to real life exchanges. It's not a replacement, but when you cannot be together, it's the next best thing. So to try and understand, if you are an organization or an event, what VR can do for you and will do for you, because like René said, it's happening little by little. You need to go there. So the platforms, so the main thing is to really go and try the social platforms to understand what it's all about. For me, the ones that I find the easiest to grab and to access with the least friction, I would say Altspace, ALTSPACE, and VR Chat are the more obvious ones. There is also Rec Room, REC Room. Those are the easy ones. There is one that has launched, I think, the day before yesterday, which is extremely convincing as a working tool, for meetings, brainstorming meetings, and work meetings. It's called Meetin, MEETIN, and it's out of Denmark. And look out for NEOS, NEOS, when it will be released, because I'm completely blown away. But now René can talk about Museum of Other Realities, because that's like the very top. But these, like Engage, which is another one, are platforms that can only be accessed with top-of-the-line headsets, Rift S, for instance, or Vive, who are connected to a computer, and that's a higher investment.
René, if you don't mind talking about that, and also you said the magic words, which were that you are working on grants and funding, and I just did a quick scan while Michel was talking, and I'd say there's a fair number of artists, experiential designers, people that do projection mapping. There's a pretty wide swath of folks. So after singing the praises of the museum of this museum, perhaps you could also share a little bit about how you all are doing what you're doing.
Yeah, let me share some links in the chat here as we go. I'm realizing this is the way to go. So I just sent a link that is an overview to Kaleidoscope events and how we organize them. So we actually started to move all of our, as I mentioned in my preamble, we started as mostly doing events because they're a great way to build community and hack a lot of things in the real world before you spend a lot of money and time building them with technology. But we realized a year and a half ago that events in the real world were great, but that they didn't scale for obvious reasons, but that they also were terrible for the environment. And they were also economically prohibitive for a lot of people. It takes a lot of money. You have to be pretty privileged to travel around the world to events. So we made the decision last year to transition 90% of our event activity online. And so we were on the hunt for a space that we could host our events in virtual reality. And all the places that Michel mentioned, along with things like Mozilla Hubs, which is sort of like an open source a project to create virtual events, they were all really great, but none of them were made by designers or artists. Whenever Kaleidoscope would host events, we'd spend a ton of time thinking about the venue. When you want to bring people together, you want to elevate the art and the artists that are presenting. And we would always start our physical events by putting a lot of attention to the venue itself. And there was nothing in VR that was that equivalent until we stumbled upon this amazing place called the Museum of Other Realities. Small team, they're in Vancouver, so just a couple hours from here. And I was there over the summer last year, and I saw a beta build of what they had been making. And it was so beautiful. It was the first space that I wanted to spend time in, that I actually enjoyed being in. It's just like a museum. Plus, you can do a bunch of stuff that you can't do in the real world because physics don't apply. But it's this beautiful venue where they curate great, art that's being produced natively for virtual reality. And so anyways, we saw that and we realized like, oh, okay, this is the spot that makes sense for us and our community to host our events in. So we started, we did our first sort of trial event there in January, when they first opened their space to the public, when they first sort of launched. And that was right when the pandemic was kicking up. And after February and March, when all of South by Southwest was starting to get canceled, and we saw that a lot of the events that our industry really relies on, we realized that this was not only, it wasn't just about us, but it was sort of an imperative for survival, that everybody do whatever we can to keep that energy and momentum that happen at these events alive. Because the deals that come out of festivals like Venice or South by or Tribeca, in a lot of ways, that's the lifeblood of this sort of arty wing of the VR community. You really need these events. So anyway, so we partnered. After that, we sort of we were like, okay, well let's hang a shingle up and not just do our own events, but let's say that we're open to partner with anybody whose events have been impacted. So that's turned into a whole wing of our company that didn't really exist before the pandemic. So we partnered with Cannes, we've partnered with Tribeca, we've partnered with VRAM, which is this great arts organization in Hamburg. We partnered with Verizon. We're going to do, and the London Fashion Institute, we're going to do a fashion show in VR. So for me, it's just a beautiful space that really shows respect to the work that's on exhibition. And from a technical perspective, they're going to launch on the Quest, which is the only really important consumer headset, in July. And I think the fact that they can actually do like full-fledged 6 DOF experiences natively in VR is tremendously compelling. So if there's any arts organizations that's on this call that are thinking about like migrating their events into VR, and where having the event take place in a really aesthetically beautiful, considered space is important, and where exhibiting the work in VR natively is important, I can't think of anything better than the Museum of Other Realities. So that's my spiel there. What was the second part? Sorry, I love them so much. I don't have stake in their company, other than that I think they're just fucking amazing. And whenever I see somebody that's doing something great, I get excited.
The second part of the question, which is popping up on the chat bar, is also just the funding side of things, that you're looking out for artists right now and looking out for different opportunities for them to sustain in this moment.
Yeah, more links. Let me share another link. I prepared slides, but it didn't. I don't know if this is the right format for it. It seems rather formal for something that's kind of informal. Here's a deck that kind of goes over how we do artist grants, but basically, so if you're right now, we've got 4 artist grants that are live, and they're all focused on VR specifically. But with the launch of this new product, we've opened up grants to be applicable to any form of art and entertainment. We're going to try to stay close to things that are related to immersive right now. But if there's anyone that's on the call that's interested in starting a community-funded grant, Kaleidoscope will seed the grant with up to $1,000. So if there's anybody that's interested in starting a grant that addresses the type of work that you care about, let me know. And if you're an artist that's wanting to submit work, you can check out the grants on that doc that I just sent in the chat log that are alive and open, and know that we're actively hustling to get new grants every month. So this is the first month that we're running these grants is now. We've got 4. I'd be surprised if we don't have maybe 10 by the end of June. Right now, again, we're going to be granting about $10,000, but at our current growth rate, we'll be granting somewhere towards 100,000 by the end of the year. And I'm sure that by then we'll be doing grants that are outside of VR and AR, certainly in film. But again, the goal is to be very omnidirectional and support artists working in any medium, but kind of use VR and immersive as the core of that, because we do see that as playing the dominant role of the media landscape in the future. But we love all forms of art and want to support all forms of art.
Can I add something to what René just said, which I think is an important note for anyone considering, exploring the VR dimension for what they do. I think I have found that constantly when you have to make choices between the different options that you have in choosing a platform to transport what you do, to give it a VR dimension, you constantly need to choose between either high-end, high-level quality of technical quality of the content, like Museum of Other Realities is offering, with very high definition, incredible tools, you know, to craft environments and design spaces on the platform, or on the other side, accessibility and like wider accessibility, because the price you have to pay if you choose a platform like Museum of Other Realities, and please René, tell me if you disagree, the price you have to pay is that is only accessible to the higher end equipment, which means that, and for instance, for Venice, we have chosen, we spoke with Robin, one of the founders, you know, of Museum of Other Realities about this, and we have chosen not to go the same route that René has chosen because of concerns for our audience. We found that the people who have access to high-end equipment, tethered headsets to computers, are not the people that are our audience. They're mostly gamers or already heavily invested immersive media, you know, players.
Yeah.
So you have incredible definition, the best in that the technology can offer today, but you have a very strong limitation in terms of the numbers of people you can reach. So on the other end, if you decide to go the route we've chosen, which is to favor standalone headsets like the Quest, for instance, which is the most popular one and which is selling like hotbreads, you have a downgraded quality of what you can do. It's not as sophisticated in terms of tools, creative tools that you can have, but you have a wider impact with people, you know, that are starting to equip themselves with headsets, and the demographics of those buyers of those headsets correspond to the kind of audience that we want to try and reach. And it's also because we have made it part of our mission to try and facilitate as much as we can access to VR so that VR artists can have a greater impact. So I find that it's a constant debate that you need to have between high quality on one end or higher impact. But at this point, you cannot have both. You cannot have super high quality with wide impact. You need to choose between both. So it really depends on the nature of what you do. And for what René does and the exhibitions he's been involved in, it makes complete sense, you know, to go with Museum of Other Realities because of the quality of what you get, you know, on that platform.
Totally agree with everything you said, Michel. But in July, they're going to be launching a Quest version of the more.
Yeah, I know. And they promised that the beta version would be available for VR Ham in Hamburg. And there was a private tour of VR Ham that was scheduled the day before yesterday that had to be canceled for people like myself who have Quests because it's not working for the moment.
Yeah, and I think that speaks more to the size of the team. And VR Chat and all these other ones are large companies. There's like 5 people that work at Museum of Other Realities, so it's a much. No. I think that's a totally valid concern. Small team versus big company.
Like Neos, this company that I was blown away by. Today.
Oh yeah, they're awesome.
They're totally incredible, and they're a group of young kids, basically out of Prague.
Yep.
Where Beat Saber, by the way, comes from. Oh, that's one thing. I mean, if you've never done Beat Saber, I would recommend you start.
It's the one breakout hit our industry has had.
Yes, definitely. And it's so much fun. I still play it like every other day. It's my health routine.
I saw that Amy threw in a question to or a suggestion to go to questions. Yeah, I'm not sure if we're addressing anything that anyone on this call is interested in. So maybe people should throw some questions in so we can. I mean, you've got Michel here. This is like one of the pillars of the immersive industry. So find a way to chip into that beautiful dome of his and extract his wisdom.
Great. So here's the first one. This one's from Devin. Devin, I can always count on you, so thank you. It says, where do you see 360 filmmaking fitting into this space in terms of funding and development and all that good stuff? Obviously, there's a big debate between 360 versus VR and all that nomenclature, but that is a question.
I can tackle the funding side, and maybe you could tackle the distribution side, or like at least the exhibition side. So on the funding side, it's definitely gone out of vogue. There's a lot less. The means of production have dropped. It's pretty affordable to produce 360 stuff. You don't see any of the big or many of the big players putting money into those types of projects. But because it is more affordable to produce, I see a lot of artists actually making a lot of cool stuff, and the quality's gotten better. So from like, I used to not be into 360, and now I'm actually super into it. I think there's a like the one that won Venice last year, Daughters of Chibuk. Really amazing artist Joel Benson in Nigeria produced this film for like no money, and it's great. So I think 360 is actually really rad, but it is hard to raise money for those projects.
I'm with you. I mean, I'm totally into 360 filmmaking. I find that every year for Venice we receive really exciting films made in 360. It's interesting to see that it's the easiest access for filmmakers who are already making flat films, and transitioning to VR through 360 filmmaking is the easiest way, because you can transport everything you know about filmmaking. Sort of applies, to VR. And you need to learn other stuff, of course, but it's an easy way to play, with the space. And amazing stories are being told in a completely different way, in 360. So I'm seeing, at least in Europe, I'm seeing that the broadcasters keep being sort of intrigued by what they can do with 360 films, but I think it will not pick up until the first of all massive adoption of headsets. People buying headsets will become a thing. And when that happens, it will happen at the same time as making 360 videos will also become easier. And people will play with this a lot more, and it will become more easily distributable. The other thing that is really interesting, I'm seeing a lot of very exciting improvements, technological improvement in what we call volumetric capture. Volumetric capture is a way of scanning, a human figure or anything, a space, and make it available in a room scale environment in 6DoF, making it, interactive. And that will create a continuum between 360 video and 6DoF pieces that are made with live action, live action filming. And that, I think, will take the 360 video out of its corner where it is today, where it's felt like a bit like the early stage of VR. So I think we're going to see more and more of that.
Terrific. This one's from Valerie, and she said, I work at a high school that has a 2-year program where we focus on 3D for design, film, and animation, and we have 2 VR sets. If you were to recommend one of the above platforms for investing for a few years of software with the most capability, what would you choose for students?
And this is for a VR headset? Like, which brand headset should they buy?
I'm not sure. I think what she's actually referring to are some of the like VR chat, Museum of Other Realities, those kinds of things. The software. Oh, sorry, the software. Thank you, Valerie, for speaking up.
When you say software, you mean software for what? For For making work or for social platforming?
Well, yeah, because the stuff that we've been mostly talking about are just places to host events.
Oh, for designing work.
Yeah, Unity. Yeah, you should be teaching your kids Unity.
Yeah.
90% of the projects on Kaleidoscope are built with Unity. If you're interested in doing anything substantive in VR and AR, and you're thinking about what skill set should you invest in, that is the only thing that you should worry about, Unity.
The only other alternative would be Unreal, UNREAL, which is a sort of competitor to Unity.
Yeah, yeah, that's the bedrock of all VR production.
Yeah.
Okay, we also have somebody that's interested in talking a little bit more about exhibition and distribution. And that's a big old topic for the last 13 minutes, but I do think that, I think people are excited to learn more. And I think that there's been a lot of talk around, especially with COVID being what it is and people being socially distanced, that exhibition will be a lot different at this moment. I mean, we've been talking about it very candidly on this call that, we will not be returning to movie theaters as soon as we hope and in the way that we've always been in there, let alone some of these other things. But maybe we could talk a little bit just about how that might work. And, do you see in the next 2 years new and different platforms for exhibition than you're seeing now? And do you see other perhaps, I don't know how I would phrase it, but old media taking on more risks with this kind of work? We saw, as René, you said, in 2017, everybody and their Nana was trying to get in on VR and 360 content, including magazines and newspapers, right? But what are you all seeing in the tea leaves in terms of options for exhibition?
One of the challenges that we are confronted with right now is the challenge of hygiene. LBE, what we call LBE is location-based entertainment, are places where people can go and they can access sophisticated experiences. But to do that, they have to don a headset that other people have used before you. So there's a real concern about how do we guarantee everyone that they are going to be using a perfectly sanitized, clean headset. And that is a real concern because the one system to do that that has been found is called CleanBox. And it's a system that is used to sterilize surgical tools. But the problem with this system is that the surgical tools are made of metal and they are simple shapes. So it's easy when you place them into this sort of microwave-like box to kill all the germs on it because all the germs are accessible and it's a simple thing. When you place a VR headset in such a box, it's very different because a headset is made of plastic, of foam, and it has all kinds of components with spaces in between them, crevices, etc. And it's been found recently that the CleanBox system cannot achieve 100% guarantee that every germs is killed. So there's still this concern that needs to be solved, and which is a major one for exhibition.
How are you solving it right now? Do you are you at liberty to say how Venice is going to do that?
Well, we are working on it. So far, the CleanBox is the only system that exists, and instead of 100%, it may be like 92 or 93% guarantee, which is pretty good. But we need something that is completely safe. So we're still working on this, and there are people working on trying to improve these systems. But right now, there is no solution that is 100% safe. So it's a major concern, and it's a very practical one, but that's where it is. So I think, I remember years and years ago when I was running a film center in Paris, when the internet appeared, I said we need to open a public internet place, an internet cafe, where people can come and access internet. We did, and it was the first internet cafe in Paris, and it ran for like 3 years. After 3 years, it folded because there was no need for it because everyone was equipped, with an access to the internet. I wonder if for VR it's not going to be progressively the same thing, that it's like a phone, you know, today, no one would think of sharing a phone, having a communal phone. You each have your own phone. I think soon, maybe, you know, in 5 years from now, everyone will have VR glasses, and no one will think of sharing those glasses with anyone else. So when the equipment, the access, the interface to access those contents will become an individual equipment, it will make everything's a lot easier in that sense. And I think that's where we're going.
We've got 2 more questions and 8 minutes to ride. So you guys refresh for a minute and take a breath and hydrate or beer drate, whatever you need to do. But they're starting to come in. One from Randall. He said, as a traditional screenwriter, he's very intrigued by VR, but what is collaboration like for writers in the medium? And how, you know, is it something where there's one director? How does that kind of collaborative nature work a little differently in VR?
I think it depends on the project. I mean, VR is such a broad, you know, field. I think if you're working in a more linear project, you know, something that's maybe a 360 video, or maybe even, you know, a 6 Degrees of Freedom animated project, you know, if it's linear, that's one big, you know, bucket you could put projects in. And then there's stuff that's super interactive that comes more from the gaming world. So it really depends on the type of project. So it's kind of all over the map. But I do think you can look at projects as coming from a certain lineage. And the big ones are, you know, projects that sort of stem from cinema, and then projects that stem from gaming. And there's projects that stem from sort of, you know, the art world or creative coding. So in terms of how a writer would engage with their team, I think it's, you know, right now we're still working on analogous, you know, working relationships depending on what you know, historical baggage you're carrying from your previous industry.
I would add to that 2 notes from experience, you know, developing VR works for the last 4 years now. I would say 2 things are key. One is watch as much stuff in VR as you can. I mean, this is absolutely key. You know, learning by watching and experiencing is key in this field. And the second thing, I would say, partner with creative technologists. Find people who know the technology, who know the options that the technology offers, because in this field, more than in any others, the improvements in technology actually can trigger options, you know, in storytelling that you didn't think of. And the reason for this is that the big difference between VR and flat film is that flat film is an art form that manipulates time, while VR manipulates time, but also, and just as much, can manipulate space. And we still don't know exactly what that means, and it can be explored in many, many different ways. We're still working out the language for this. So I would say, make sure you don't write alone in your corner. Watch as much stuff as possible and collaborate with people who are surveying and exploring the field on a technical level.
I couldn't agree more. And that's, you know, something that I feel like I've learned more by doing, right? I think it's a very, very different thing. And as Michel and René have alluded to, it's a little bit like film, right? You know, we all have different tastes. We all have different, you know, predilections for what we like to create. But the more you watch in general, the more you're going to have that whole Swiss Army knife of skills to choose from when you get in there. So good question. There's 2 more. I'll make it snappy because I want Michel to go to bed before 2. Or
no, don't worry, I'm fine.
I mean, I know you're in Amsterdam. 2 o'clock is like our 7:30. I get it, but we want to be thoughtful. 2 more questions. One from Kurt that I'll just summarize quickly. You know, he's talking about maybe, you know, headsets that are more for general public use, right? So he was saying he has something called an Ultimax Phone VR headset, and it is fully immersive. He's holding it up. It may not be the $400 version, but is that something that, you know, where do you see VR phone technology headed in terms of normalizing the tech? I don't know whether you all have strong opinions about that, but, you know, I've seen it too, where, you know, there's used to be the cardboard boxes and now it's like a little bit of, you know, more like what Kurt has, where it's almost like a gimme, right? You're giving it, and it's like, get in there, try it, and then that's like the starter drug to, cocaine, right? But it's just one of those things that I think are on people's minds, how they figure out how to use this technology and make it something that's more mainstream.
I think it's all about the Quest. I think everything's going to stem from that. I think that's the model of how this gets consumer adopted. I think things that look like the Quest will just become cheaper. I don't know if they'll ever, I think the price points will be similar to what cell phones are now.
Yeah, and I think, I mean, this kind of headset, where you can slide your phone inside, is a great way to to access VR when you start, but very, very quickly you're not going to be able to watch most of what is being made, because the two new frontiers of VR right now is definitely interactivity and social interaction in VR, and those functions will not be available through this system. So I agree with René. It is going to be the same kind of adoption curve as the smartphones, and the price point is going to be around the same kind.
Great, we're going to bring it home. Fernanda has a good question about what's coming in creative coding. I know there's a lot of folks here that are kind of at that intersection of experiential design, tech, VR, all this good stuff, right? So I don't know that you all are seeing anything on that front that you wanted to share as well as we wrap.
My thoughts on it are that this isn't universally true, but the artists that I am most excited about and have since I got into this industry are people that are playing in that creative coding space. They're people that can house both the aesthetic and artistic sensibilities and technical considerations in one brain. The work that comes from those people are typically the stuff that I'm most drawn to. And it's also an economics issue as well, in that if you are sort of falling more into that creative coder world, you can produce your own work without having to rely on anyone else. And that's always a superpower for an artist, to not have to rely on anyone else to make your work. So again, if you're really serious about this medium, I think you do have to start to get into some level of coding proficiency, at least on a very, very basic level. Because even in Unity, you need to at least know how to copy and paste other people's code and manipulate it a little bit.
Yeah, I said that today I went into Neos, this new platform, and I saw in it the most amazing toolbox for creative coding, which is really made of building blocks that you can just physically in space manipulate and put together and do your code manually, like with those building bricks. And I was very impressed with the interface, and I thought, oh my God, then maybe I can start coding, which I thought I would never be clever enough to do. And so that was quite striking. So it's going there.
Well, Michel and René, thank you so much. I think all of our minds were blown a little bit, and let's give a big Portland round of applause to Michel. I know he's a grown ass man, but still, to stay up late and give your time.
Oh, please! It's Friday night. It's the weekend, and there's no merit in being up at that time of night. Sincerely, it's such a pleasure. Such a pleasure also to chat.
Thank you for having us, Amy. And good to see you, Michel, and everyone else. I want to give a shout out to Thomas Wester. He's one of the most talented VR artists I know in Portland. I'm glad to see him on the line. If anyone is interested in VR stuff in Portland, he's probably a much better resource than me. So good to see you on the participant list, Thomas.
Such a fun bunch today. Such a wild card group. Week 10. Now this is the one to beat. But thank you, everyone. So many good folks showed up today, and keep talking to each other. We're going to open the group wider, and so again, I would encourage all of you who have been here, many of you have been here since the very beginning. Tell us groups of folks you think should be on this call. I'm so excited to see high school teachers on this call. I'm so excited to see college professors on this call. I'm so excited to see so many different folks coming together, and we want to keep building on this. So week 10 is the one to beat. So let's all work together to figure out some additional folks to invite to this and to keep it going. But thanks so much, everyone, and go enjoy your beers, margaritas, time on the porch in your hammocks. And Michel, go to bed. We love you.
No. There's more to come.
Thanks, Michel, Renee. Well done.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, good
Bye,
to see
everyone.
you. Bye.
Thank you so much.